Hi guys, it's Ray here from Man City Fan Chat. Well, it's finally here, transfer deadline day, and the transfer window for incoming purchases closes at 5 p.m. tonight. That's 5 p.m. tonight. But around Europe, it does close at different times, and I think for City fans, the most important other countries' transfer deadline that we need to take note of, and I think we will, is Germany. And in Germany, the transfer deadline shuts on the 2nd of September, not the 31st of August, as other people have mistakenly said, but it's the 2nd of September. Now, we've already bought Angelino as cover left-back. We've already bought Rodri as probably a holding or defensive midfielder going forward for many years. And we've also, yesterday, finally signed Cancelo to put pressure on Kyle Walker at right back, and that's going to be a big fight to see who's going to come out on top, who's going to be our first choice right back, and I think we'll find out partway through the season. We've also dabbled and we've also looked at a couple of other positions. One is centre back, but when Harry Maguire's price rose to quite ridiculous £80 million, City said we're not going to do that. We're not going to pay that sort of money on only one club would be as ridiculous enough to go and pay that sort of money for Harry Maguire. So the other position we've looked at is goalkeeper. Now, you've heard me talk about Riesgo, and that City were apparently interested in him, as a third choice keeper. And I said I didn't see the point in buying a 30-odd-year-old, mid-30s keeper to be third choice. Yes, he could have been a coach, goalkeeping coach in the future, but we could still do that anyway. Yeah, yes, it'd be nice to have him in the club. But Claudio, I look at it this way: he would have taken up a non-homegrown slot. If Claudio Bravo doesn't leave, whose slot does he take? We're already packed up. We have no spaces in our non-homegrown quarter. Yeah. So whose place does he take? Who do we kick out to let him in? I just couldn't see it happening. Bravo's got 1 year left on his contract. What I could see happening is Bravo leaving when his contract's finished next year, even though he's playing really well, we've seen so far in the pre-season and in the Community Shield against Liverpool. And Riesgo could come in next summer, yeah, play a couple of years at City as second, third choice, whatever, and then become a coach. I can see that happen. To me, that's more likely. And I never saw Riesgo as a goer once Claudio Bravo said, I'm staying, and we had no other vacancies in our squad. Yeah, if Leroy Sané had left, then we get a vacancy, we can get Riesgo. So who are we looking at? Well, it's not as if we're looking at nobody. We're apparently looking at Scott Carson. Who? You might ask. Scott who? Scott Carson. He's the Derby goalkeeper right now. He has played for England. Now, one of the reasons we're looking at Scott Carson is because he's association trained. So he would count as a homegrown player. I think, off the top of my head, we've got 3 homegrown players at the moment, and we've got who are association trained. We can have 4. I think it's Raheem Sterling, John Stones, Kyle Walker. So we can have 4. So we've got a spot there. All our non-homegrown spots are taken, so we've got this homegrown spot for association trained players available, and Scott Carson would fit in there. He'd be a third choice keeper behind Claudio Bravo. He's not really going to be pushing for first team action. I think, like Richard Wright a few years ago, he's happy to be third choice, pick up a nice wage bracket, maybe get an occasional game in the Carabao Cup or something, or if someone's injured, be on the bench, maybe even get a few minutes on the pitch sometime this season, and hopefully pick up a few trophies towards the latter end of his career. Now, the rumour is that it's a 12-month loan. I'm not 100% sure. That's just a rumour I've heard from one source that it's a 12-month loan. Other sources seem to feel that we're going to do an outright purchase on Scott Carson. Obviously, I've got no inside knowledge on this. I don't really know, but he's a good, capable option. And with my conspiracy theorist hat on, okay, I'll give you an extra reason why we might be going for Scott Carson. Aro Muric, our backup keeper last season. Now he's going out on loan. He's on loan at Nottingham Forest. And apparently Nottingham Forest was sniffing around Scott Carson this week. Now, Aro Muric needs game time. He needs to be playing. That's why he's gone out on loan. He needs that experience and exposure. Muric having a pretty poor game. He made a couple of clangers at the weekend for Forest when I think they lost the first league game of the season. There's obviously a slight worry that they'd get Scott Carson, and if Muric made a couple more clangers, Muric should be out. And Carson will be in. Muric needs that game time. So that's just a jokey conspiracy theorist extra reason why we might be going for Scott Carson. And lastly in this spot, obviously we're going to talk about Leroy Sané. That's the name that keeps cropping up again and again and again. And people worried, how is he going to go to Bayern Munich? Yeah. Is he going to sign a new contract? What's happening? What's his injury situation? What's happening there? Well, I think the situation is Bayern Munich wanted to pay about 100 million euros for Leroy Sané. They tapped him up all summer long, and I think that's the kind of level they think they could get away with all this pressure from other players and tapping him up, and Leroy possibly pushing for a transfer himself. Okay, now City have come back and said no. First of all, shut up. Don't talk about our player in public. And Bayern have shut up now. Very, very quickly, bang. And after 2 months of chatting and everybody talking about him, Lewandowski, Neuer, Goretzka, Joshua Kimmich, Kovac, the manager, Uli Hoeneß, the convicted fraudster and jailbird, president of Bayern, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, the chairman of Bayern, and as I said, Niko Kovac, the manager of Bayern, everybody talking about him, suddenly it's stopped. And City said, we want 150 million euros for Leroy Sané, because that's honestly what he's worth. Because look at João Felix going for, 112 million quid? Or whatever it was, well over 100 million. Sané's better than him. He's proven more than him, okay? Whatever João Felix may go on to do, right now, Sané's shown a lot more than João Felix, in my opinion. So he's worth that 150 million euros, equates to about 137 million pounds. Now, I'm not sure Bayern Munich have got the money. Not right now, anyway. And I think they were hoping that Sané would put that transfer request in or push for a transfer, agitate for a transfer, and that would help force through the move. We know from what Pep Guardiola said. He said a month ago, Leroy was close to signing his new contract, and now he's not. So the feeling is, a month ago, he's going to sign it. Now, what's stopping him? What's made him move far away from signing this new contract? So you get the feeling over the last month that his mind has changed, and instead of signing for City, he wants to go to Bayern. That's the feeling you seem to get from what Pepper said, from the other information out there. That's what my feeling seems to be now. Yeah. Regardless of the fact that City included him quite extensively in the marketing for the new kits. Well, that was over a month ago. He was looking like he was going to sign. They took him on tour because you take your players on tour, and he potentially was still going to sign. And they started him in the Community Shield because Pep wanted to win that game. So he started with his best available team, and that's why I believe he put Nico Otamendi in, even though he probably wasn't up to speed prep-wise because he's not so long finished at Copa America. So he wanted to win that game, so he put his best team out, and that included Leroy Sané. Now, Leroy Sané got injured, we saw, after, 10 or 12 minutes, whatever it was, not long into the game. And people, are wondering, what is his injury? What's the extent of his injury? Will that cause an issue with this potential switch to Bayern? What's going to happen? Okay, apparently, City should be finding out today whether his knee injury is it's an ACL issue, okay? It's a cruciate ligament issue. Now, they'll find out whether it's a partial tear, which will require much less time to recover from than an actual rupture, which could basically finish his season, depending on how bad it is. That could be his season over. I think Claudio Bravo had a similar thing, and he was out for 8-9 months. So that could finish Leroy Sané's season. You've heard the stories that apparently it's only rumours that Bayern Munich weren't happy that City played Leroy while negotiations were underway. Hang on a minute, Bayern Munich. City want 150 million euros. If you'd have paid, if you'd ponied up that 150 million euros last week or the week before, or whenever City said that's our price, you'd have had the guy. You'd have had him by now. So stop complaining, stop whinging, stop crying, if that's the story. So, and this actually turns things on its head. It's a new twist. Now, if Leroy Sané has ruptured his ACL, then he's going to be out for many, many months. So, depending on how serious this injury is, Bayern Munich may have to look elsewhere, because they can't rely on getting Leroy Sané if he's going to be out for 6 months or 9 months or 3 months. Their transfer window closes in September. So They maybe end up looking, do we go for a temporary replacement? Somebody just to get us through a season, someone in the mid-30s or early 30s, just to get us through a season or two? Or do we go for a permanent replacement for Leroy Sané? Now, there was rumours yesterday that they were looking at Gareth Bale as a signing. Now, if they get Gareth Bale, unless he's happy to go on loan there, and Real Madrid are happy for him to go on loan, that'll be a permanent signing, an expensive permanent signing, even more expensive in terms of wages than Leroy Sané was going to be. Leroy Sané was going to ask for somewhere in the region of 18 million euros a year. Gareth Bale will want 30 million euros a year. It might be slightly cheaper on his transfer fee, but that's a big issue. So if Bayern go down the route of getting a permanent replacement for a guy they haven't even signed yet, then what would happen to Leroy Sané? Would Bayern come back next summer? Very unlikely. If they bought Gareth Bale and they got him on a permanent deal, unless they can offload Bale, they wouldn't probably come back in for Sané, because it's just too the numbers are just going too high, I think, to get Bale and Sané in 2 summers. I just can't see that working unless they offload expensive players, and that starts messing with your strategy. If it's all this to do with one player, unless you really, really, really do want him. So I think you might end up with Bayern going out for somebody else, Leroy Sané looking there and saying, what are my options? Bayern have just gone out and got Gareth Bale or somebody top. I mean, remember, Bayern have still got 4 weeks to sort before their transfer window closes. What's Leroy Sané going to do? He's going to sit there thinking, well, Bayern have just bought a great player. What are my chances? What promises are Bayern making that they're going to take me next year? And it may just be that Leroy Sané decides then, at that point, the best option is to re-sign with City, sign that contract extension with City, because he doesn't know if Bayern are going to come back in a year's time. And Bayern may have already told him, if we go for somebody else, we're not going to come for you. They may make it quite explicit. And Leroy Sané might sign that contract as if he was always going to sign that contract. Who knows? So it's going to be a very, very exciting transfer deadline day. Guys, I'll be on Twitter for most of the day. Get in touch with me when I'm doing a transfer deadline update as the day goes on. Let's see what happens with Scott Carson. Let's see if we go in for anybody else. I wouldn't be surprised if we got 1, possibly 2 more young kids, because that's the way we do our business. Getting young kids in, putting them through the system, churning them out, either as great footballers or to be sold on and make a profit. That's the way we do it. Whether you think it's right or wrong, that's the way City are making some of their money these days. But keep in touch with me. Let me know in the comment section below. Let me know on Twitter who you want City to buy, who you think we might be interested in. Ask me questions. I mean, people are already asking me about other clubs and Zaha and other stuff like that. But I'm quite happy to get involved if I can and give some information to you guys. So as I said, let me know in the comment section below. Let me know on Twitter. Keep up to date with our transfer day deadline news. I'm sure there's no other City fans channels doing this. And it's all for you guys, the fans. See you around, Blues.